The following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
See this here? This is my family. May not be like your family, but you come pointing guns in the direction of my wives and my kids, I will meet you at the door any time.
Get on the ground now! Please stop! There are women and children in here!
Well, we're back with another episode of Rotten Potatoes Waco Miniseries, episode 5. We are one episode away from the end. Joined with Justin and Craig. Justin, last name, and Craig Smolt. How are you guys doing?
All right. At this point, I would like you to stop using my last name, just in case.
You'll have to go back and redact your last name every time.
Yes.
I'm going to start calling Craig, but with Justin's last name, so nobody knows.
They'll never know.
Anyway, episode 5. What'd you guys think?
Wow. There's a lot going on in this episode. There's some pretty... So most of it was pretty accurate from what I remember. We'll eventually talk about that ending. I got some feelings about that. But One of the things that really stuck out to me that was tense and well done in the episode, and also was something that actually happened, so I'm really happy they actually brought it up, was, if you remember, I don't think it was this episode, but it was the previous episode where Thibodeau was burying Perry Jones outside.
Yeah.
Was that this episode? Yeah. So they had...
He buried him in the last episode.
They
ran over the grave in this one.
Exactly. That's what I was going to bring up.
You just spoiled his
Spoiler.
build-up. He was building up to this.
My bad.
Yeah, at this point, the FBI is getting really impatient with the negotiation side of things, and they bring the tanks in. We see the tanks going around clearing out a lot of the stuff they had outside, destroying cars, and running over the freshly made grave of Perry Jones, which is just absolutely sickening to even say that, because that happened, everybody. That happened.
Right.
In the show, at the very least, they clearly saw him spending the time risking his life to bury him there. And for them to just go and trample on it with a tank, which in the show, actually, they didn't do the scene justice, because in real life, they ran over it 3 or 4 or 5 times before, to make sure it was good and ran over. On the show, they just showed it get ran over the one time and crushed the grave, the cross on the grave and stuff. So,
right. Yeah, I was wondering if they would do it justice even in, I kind of assumed that they would, if they weren't going the way that they've been going, I would have assumed they would have had the grave there and just kind of ran over this mound and not really shown very apparently that it was him, but they showed him running over the grave, running over the cross. They showed the woman's response to it and all that. So they definitely made it very apparent what was happening there.
Right.
That was I'm glad that it was dramatic, but I'm glad they talked about it and they showed it, because that's, just when you hear about that just sounds like something an evil villain would do, you know?
Right.
Right.
Screw you, but also screw you're dead.
So let's see what
they really pointed out that scene of them just bringing in the tanks and just destroying everything. They did a good job of showing the reaction of the people and the response and stuff. And just imagine being in those people's shoes, the Davidian shoes, at that point when the tanks haven't really moved. They've been pretty stationary for the most part up to this point. Then all of a sudden, one day they wake up and these tanks are just absolutely obliterating everything in sight. And it's what's going to happen next? Because clearly they're making a move right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like their the way that they portrayed the Branch Davidians in this, because even more so than before, they're showing that people were questioning. They were there were a lot of people, even David Thibodeau was I'm going to leave. And he's well, go. And he's if I leave, can I take, my technical wife and your kid with me and all that? Showing just different people, even his close friends and everything, questioning the whole message, the whole idea, the whole reason why they're there.
Yeah, it definitely. There was a lot of breaking. There was a lot of breakdown of people leaving. I mean, I was glad they, Koresh kicked out that one guy for drinking.
Yeah.
Is that real?
Uh, I think so, but I'm trying. I can't seem to remember. Now I'm gonna do a quick search online. No. That guy did survive, so that person was real.
So he did get out at some point.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
maybe this was just their dramatization of why he got out and the rest didn't, maybe.
Yeah.
My biggest question for you, Justin, on this one is there's the scene where they get their generator back up and running, and we can jump around on this. This doesn't have to be like the end or anything, but there's the scene where they get their generator up and running, and he's like, "I know exactly what we're going to use with our 10 minutes of gasoline that we have left," and they go up and they play a song.
Yeah, so that's the ending, and I have no idea if that's real or not. That seemed pretty ridiculous. It was a nice build up for like, all right, episode 6, we know what's going to happen here, but it also
I hope
to be
that's
honest,
true, because it was so just like badass.
I am doubtful that it's true, because I know at some point the FBI did send in a message. Maybe this was after the fact, though. Maybe because of that ridiculous antagonizing song that he played. Maybe because at some point the FBI came in and said, "We don't want to see anybody in the windows. If we see you in the windows, we're going to assume you're a threat, and we're going to feel like we need to shoot you." So if that happened before this scene, then David would have definitely been shot in the window, which I'm surprised, honestly, that he didn't get shot in the window, even without them making that statement, just because of the moods and stuff that were happening at this point. Like all the FBI agents were really getting sick of it. It's like, well, they had like a pretty easy shot there. He was lit up, and he was definitely on a stage. Yeah. It could have taken him out for sure.
Well,
so
whether it's like, whether it's not real and just TV magic, it's good TV. Like, that was a great point in the episode for me.
You didn't. Justin kind of cut you off, so we didn't actually describe the scene.
Well, yeah, I forgot that it was basically like the last scene in the episode, but it doesn't really matter, because if you're listening to this, hopefully you've already watched the episode anyway. But the end of the episode is they get the generator up and running, and the guy says that they have 10 minutes of power to run it on, and David. Main guy whose name I don't remember offhand for
Thibodeau.
some reason. Nope.
Koresh?
Yes, Koresh is like, I know exactly what to do with it. Yeah, I know. It's been a long night. But
David, last name?
David's nope.
We're censoring his last name for his protection.
Yes. Oh. Anyway, they basically play a song. He gets his guitar, gets a full band. David Thibodeau is playing drums and everything. They play a song out the window at the people that is like very interesting song, like against them, about how they're called by God or whatever, and they're not leaving. I don't remember exactly what the points are in the song, but it was a really cool ending to an episode, even if it was just for TV.
The song was, I'll tell you here in a second, because I had a review pulled up and they mentioned the name of the song.
Well, while you're looking that up, to talk about one thing that they did do that was accurate, I can say 100%, was their discussion of psychological warfare, the actual implementation of psychological warfare,
right.
And the media, the press conference, FBI denying that they were using. Right. What is psychological warfare? I don't know what that is. Like, they're just blatantly lying about what they were doing. So.
And we talked about that in the main Waco episode. And when we talked about it, I mean, for me, like, it's hard to visualize, like, when exactly these things took place. This shows it, like, I don't know if it happened exactly like this, but one night they're doing the psychological warfare, shining lights on the compound or whatever. Don't want to trigger you, Justin, using words like compound, but shining lights on the village and playing the sounds of animals being slaughtered and stuff like that. And then they show it as, or at least it seems like, it's basically the next day. The guy's like, we didn't do that. I can't
if we
see how
did-
that being possible.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not 100% sure, but it is highly unlikely that that's not happening. And that's actually the lines he used are verbatim from the
Right.
press conference that I watched of him saying that. And so seeing the press conference didn't hit as strong as you said as actually seeing it.
Right.
This guy basically was the guy that called the shot and said, yeah, go in and do this. You got the all clear to do all this stuff. And he's there the whole time. Then all of a sudden he turns around and he's like, yeah, I don't know if that's happening. It's like you're the main guy on the ground and you're trying to say you don't know that
Right.
this is happening.
Yeah, when you hear about it, I mean, my brain made it like it happened, and then maybe like a long time later, he did a press conference, maybe even after the whole siege and everything, he did a press conference saying, yeah, I can't see that as being factual, but Justin, do you know, was it as close, like, did that press conference happen while it was actually going on, like they portrayed it?
About discussing the psychological warfare? and
Yeah,
things
like
that?
him denying it, was it
Oh,
kind
yeah,
of immediately
yeah.
after?
It was about the same time.
Yeah.
So that's fairly accurate then.
Yeah,
Not completely accurate.
what's trying to think, there was another thing, so we went over just to clarify, because we didn't actually say what the psychological warfare was, but they were cutting power somewhat randomly. It seems like they were turning it off and on. They were shooting bright spotlights, playing loud sound and slaughterhouse sounds. It was
Right.
just disgusting.
And I liked the fact that they pointed out they're having a conversation after they cut the power. I think it's with Koresh and the FBI guy. I might be wrong, but they're pointing out. He's like, "You're cutting our power." It might have been from the other guy, but he's like, "You're cutting our power right after you give us milk. We can't keep the milk good if you cut our power. Like we can't keep it cold. What's the point
it shows
of this?"
It shows him like pouring out like rotten milk at like a few days later because it's got to be blistering hot there. This is Texas, so I mean
Right.
it is February, I guess, but still.
Well, it's like the middle of the
Actually-
desert, even in February.
Right. So it doesn't take much to spoil milk. A couple days of non-refrigerated, and it's going to be spoiled. And yeah, that scene was interesting, that part. And then also the part where they portrayed somebody saying the lines, well, you're taking a guy that you are portraying as
Yes.
crazy, and you're just going to push his buttons and see where he goes from there and just hope he just becomes like easy to work with, pretty much.
Yeah,
that's not the exact lines, obviously, but that was the gist of the conversation.
Yeah, even like during our main episode, that was, I mean, I was kind of learning at the time, and that was the point that I made. It's like, you have a guy who you think is mentally unstable. You think that psychological warfare and like pushing him over the brink is going to make it better? Like you are saying that this guy's crazy.
With crazy people, psychological warfare has the opposite effect. Because with sane people, it turns them crazy. With crazy people, it turns them sane, apparently, is what their thought is behind it.
It seems logical. No.
Yeah. It's just, yeah, I don't know what else to say, man. I think we really covered it all, and I think we've reached what's going to happen?
I don't think we hit all of it.
I mean, a lot of this episode is dialogue, which is great dialogue, and it's hard to remember a lot of it, but it's a lot of back and forth between the FBI guy and whoever's heading up the actual raid and all that. A lot of this episode focused on that and the trauma that the Davidians experienced from the psychological warfare and just them dealing with that. But yeah,
one of the lines from the head of the tactical unit, which I cannot stand that guy, the character that plays, or the actor that plays him, just his smug look all the time. Most of it I can't stand, but there is the line where he says like, the amount of law enforcement to civilians in the world is like 1,000 to 1, and the way you can like kind of keep order is basically making them afraid of you. And with them just sitting around on their thumbs, not doing anything, you're kind of the whole world is seeing you kind of lose that element of fear, I guess, in the eyes of people, and everyone's going to start. yeah, they're losing authority, and so I kind of understand that point of view. I mean, it's a shitty point of view, but I mean, from a cop or a law enforcement's perspective, if you're outnumbered 1,000 to 1 and all of a sudden you lose that authority, then you're basically have a pointless job. So, I mean, I can give
It's
them
not
that
good
benefit of a doubt,
justification,
I guess.
but yeah, it makes sense how a human could come to that logical conclusion. But
Especially in law enforcement, where you're basically your life is on the line
yeah,
all the time. So, I mean, yeah, you can easily make that assumption, but that's not really justification for the actions they did. I don't think.
yeah. The thing that I love about this show is that it's like it's not taking a huge slant. And I know I've said this a million times, but basically every episode, it's taking sympathy for the Branch Davidians, but it's not taking a huge slant toward the Branch Davidians. If anything, it's taking a huge slant towards the negotiator, the FBI guy, because he is the guy that's like in the middle, and he's the rational thinking guy who's not listening to God for his thoughts and his actions, and he's like trying to play the middleman between this giant government power who's like, let's wipe them off the face of the earth, and the other guy who's like, God is telling me to hold. So yeah, like I sympathize the most with the FBI guy.
He's definitely so it's interesting when I was thinking about like right now just who's like the main character. It's really a split between the FBI guy, Thibodeau, Schneider, and Koresh.
Yeah.
Gary Noesner, that's the FBI guy's name.
Which is based off of the FBI guy in Thibodeau's book. So they're kind of showing mostly their story, which I think is awesome.
But it definitely switches around a lot between that character being like the focus. Like Steve Schneider is a pretty important guy. I mean, he was chiefly the one involved in the negotiations, and he didn't make it, which is unfortunate to say the least. But
I think if it wasn't for Steve Schneider, things would have escalated a lot quicker.
Oh yeah, if
Gideon's
Koresh
side.
was the go-to guy, they would have been burned down a lot sooner.
Yeah.
Or they would have burnt themselves down a lot sooner. Oh, one thing I wanted to point out. There was one part that they hinted around a lot about, speaking of on fire. How many times did phone calls get made or conversations had where they specifically said, the media is making out that we're going to commit mass suicide. We have no intention of committing mass suicide.
Yeah.
Who was it that called their mom? Or not their mom, their sister. Somebody called their sister. Was it Steve Schneider? Yeah, it was Steve.
Yeah, Steve
called his sister.
He found a phone that had a little bit of charge left and called his sister and told her specifically, they're saying this about us. They're saying that we're suicidal. Just so you know, if it's reported that we committed suicide, that's not true. Nobody here is suicidal.
And then, what's his name? Gary Noesner. Is that what you said his name was?
Yeah.
I think he was talking to Steve, or he was talking to one of the Davidians, and he kind of hinted around about it. And Steve was like, "Is that what you think we're going to do? That's the furthest from what we want to do right now. If we were going to commit suicide, why would we be in here holding ourselves up this long? Why wouldn't we have done it by now?"
Right.
Or why would we even? It was something like, why would we even be talking to you right now, negotiating, if we were planning on committing mass suicide?
Yeah, and that's a freaking huge point in the whole case. It's like they make it out as these guys are a crazy cult, and they just like they got to a breaking point and they killed themselves. If they did that, maybe it's because you were pushing psychological warfare on people that you thought had, mass amounts of guns and were unstable and were crazy. I mean, giving them huge benefit of the doubt, but more likely, how they're saying over and over again, at least. I mean, do we have accounts of them saying in real life the call to his sister where they're saying specifically, we are not going to kill ourselves, or him saying, I think he even said it in the show on the walk back with the sheriff when they got the milk, we're not suicidal, or some other point.
Yeah,
I think the call to the family did happen, that Schneider did call his sister. You know what? I'm going to definitely gonna have to definitely do a little research onto that one.
Yeah.
But I think it happened from what I remember reading and watching. So I don't know.
I just thought that hint was really hammered like 3 or 4 times. We are not suicidal. So in the very least, everyone besides David Koresh had no intention of committing suicide. They never came out and said that. I don't think they ever portrayed him as saying that, but for the general public in the quote unquote compound, that wasn't the idea. That wasn't the plan. It wasn't like they were working, like building this up to be this big hurrah at the end of them burning in a blaze of fire.
Which makes no sense at all.
No.
Yeah, I also liked the fact that they showed, and Justin, you can weigh in on whether or not you know if this is factual or not, but the 2 moms that were bickering before, David Koresh's mom and David Thibodeau's mom, they finally paired up, and they're like, they made, David Koresh's mom was like, we are on the same side. We both have a son in there that we want to get out alive. Like, I did not raise him to be this way. I understand that you want your son to come out alive. That's exactly what I want too. Like, we are not enemies. And then Thibodeau's mom ended up going and staying with her at her hotel room. Is there any point where that has been confirmed or anything like that?
I think at the very least, this is just showing the human side around the whole situation. Like, this isn't just affecting the agents and the Davidians.
And the crazy people.
These people have families around them that are just as concerned for them as the people who had the ATF agents that died, their family. Everyone there has somebody that is looking out for them and like wanting them to get out of this alive. And it's just kind of, if nothing else, it's there to show that these people were still humans with families. And
yeah, I would say if that's a creative liberty, I'm totally fine with it, because that is a very easily plausible situation that could have happened, because it makes total sense for Thibodeau's mom to be, put off by Koresh's mom, because she must have raised her son to be a crazy cult leader. But for them to finally come to cahoots on that, I think is really cool.
Well, I think the one important thing that we can point out from this that I know is true, and I think maybe they took some artistic liberty in portraying it, but I think they did it good enough to show the important part of the story, was the FBI did not allow family members to get involved in the negotiation. So when we see Koresh's mother there trying to do something, when we see Thibodeau's mother there trying to do something, to the extent that Koresh's mom and Thibodeau's mom interacted, unclear. To the extent that Thibodeau's mother interacted with the negotiator, it's not immediately clear. But we do know that family members of Koresh and family members of other Branch Davidians were explicitly denied the ability to speak with the people inside, which goes to show,
And there is documentation that family members came up and was like, if I can just talk to him, I know I can get him to come out. I can convince him to stand down. And they, like you said, they completely denied them any access to them. And in the show, they portrayed it as, well, we don't want them to be able to tie up loose ends. Basically, like, well, if that might be the last step they need before they go and commit suicide. And even the family members were like, that's not what's happening here.
Right. They're like, what the hell does that mean first? And they're like, don't want to tie up loose ends. Like, which even now, if those were the words that were used, it's like, that is creepy way of expressing that. Yeah, it's like, you don't want to tie up loose ends, meaning you don't want lives to be saved. Even if Thibodeau's mom could have talked to him and convinced him to come out on his own, that's not tying up loose ends. That's like, if one life can be saved and they can get out and they can be convinced to come out, why would you not allow them to do that? Which the whole idea of them not allowing family members to say, hey, at least you, the person I know, the person I love, please come out. You remember, when I did this for you, when you remember how you grew up in this way, like relating to them and saying, hey, you're not in the right here. Why would they not allow that? That makes no sense at all.
Right.
Can I just completely unrelated, but I mean, not unrelated to Waco, but just about what you guys were just talking about. I just Googled something about the Steve Schneider, whether or not he called someone, and I found a link on the Google search to the justice.gov, the United States Department of Justice, about a report for Waco, and I go to the website and it's for a Ford. So it's like they took it down.
It's for Ford, like Ford Motor Company.
40 Ford.
Mm.
404, not page not found.
Oh, 404.
So I found the cached version on Google where it kind of goes through, but the actual site was updated September 30th, 29th of 2016, and they took it down. So maybe the conspiracy side of me is like, well, why is the Justice Department modifying their website to not have Waco timelines? Really makes you think.
Probably, especially now when a lot of people are probably going to be trying to look into that and compare notes with the actual timeline with the show. Now it's
Justin,
all of a sudden it's like it doesn't exist.
Justin, Craig, stop being such crazy conspiracy theorists. I mean, you're really discrediting my show. I'm kidding, obviously. That is very bizarre for sure.
I could see if it was like somebody ranting on YouTube about the conspiracy side of it and then them taking it down for bullying reasons or whatever bullshit excuse YouTube gives nowadays. But for the actual federal website to all of a sudden disappear right coincidentally now, or maybe it just crashed because too many people were looking at it.
Yeah. Anyway, another scene that I really liked was the FBI negotiators conversation with the guy. Don't remember who he was, but he's like eating and they're chatting it up, and he's like, what can we do? What can we do to end this? Like, we need to give them the power back. We need to turn the power back on. We need to. I mean, shows of force is not working with these people. And he's like, well, you got to talk to the other guy. He's like, the other guy listens to you, mother effer.
Yeah, that was the head of the tactical team, the guy that is portrayed as a total douchebag on this whole thing. Yep. The one that's calling the shots and pushing the tanks in and stuff.
Do we have any evidence that he's not a total douchebag?
Yeah, no. But
then it's fine.
This episode was, what we haven't mentioned is this episode was where the guy in charge is over the tactical team, that one guy, I can't think of his name, and then also the negotiating team. He's like the head honch. And he's been following the negotiator side and taking his advice for most of this. Well, all of a sudden on this particular part, this is like day 12 or something, he's tired of waiting for it. And so he shifts his whole push over to the tactical side, and he starts listening to the advice from the head of the tactical team here. Yeah. So we see a complete total shift in the way things are handled from this point. And so it goes from, hey, we're trying to work with them and trying to get this done as peacefully as possible. Now it's shifted to, we want to get this done right now.
Right. Yeah, and there's the scene where Baldy, large man, is talking.
The guy without a neck?
Yeah.
The head honch. We'll just call him the head honch.
Head honch is talking. I think it was in this episode where he's like, I think it was when the psychological warfare is going down, and he says something to the effect of, or he's told by his second-hand man, hey, we can have a plan on your desk by morning to, move in, start wrapping shit up. And he's like, yeah, give me that plan.
Yeah.
He's like, have it on my desk tomorrow, pretty much. Like I said, this is 12 days in, which seems like an incredible amount of time to be sitting on something like this, when in reality it ends up being 52 or 51 days. So it's like you got a long way ahead of you, and it only goes downhill, I think, from that point.
Yeah, I think the next episode is going to be really crazy, and it's supposedly the last episode of this miniseries, and it's going to wrap up all this stuff within 40 minutes of time.
Yeah, we got like 20 days to wrap up in one episode.
Well, I'm trying to think of what are the major things before the day of the fire. Do we want to kind of talk about that?
Go for it.
What's going to lead up? So what I think the things they're going to have to cover in order to tell the truth and also be fair is talk about the Davidians that were overheard on their bugs that were planted by the FBI, about the wall of fire, about the moving some stuff around to, the argument that the government made that the Davidians set the fire. That needs to be talked about somehow.
Right.
Because we do have audio of some Davidians talking about this, so we can't deny that. So that's going to definitely have to be talked about. They're going to have to talk about. They should show how they cleared out everything away from the compound.
You said it. You heard it from Dustin.
So, and then, I mean, on the last day, I mean, they'll just need to make sure they include the FLIR footage. They're going to need to show the arguments for Delta Squad being on site, the gunshots being done not only around the facility but internally near the kitchen area, the infrared footage, and then I mean it'd be great if they also talked about the bomb on top of the roof.
Right.
There's a lot.
I wonder if they'll even bring in the Delta Squad with it, or if they'll just wrap it up as an FBI job.
Man, if they brought in Delta Squad, you know where they stand,
right?
Because the Delta Squad claims they weren't there. You know that the official story is they weren't there, but
right. Yeah, but we've said that about many things. They definitely won't say this, and they keep giving us our jellies.
Yeah, we've been saying, having to like backpedal on that pretty much since the beginning. It's like, well, they're not actually going to show who shot first, and actually show. Oh, they're not going to show that they did this and they do that. And
right. Since the first shot, I'm like, holy shit, where are you going with this? How much big brass balls do you have? But Craig, do you have reviews for us?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Give
My
us the
first
reviews.
We got to go with our loyal reviewer first of Den of Geek.
Den of Geek.
Because we got to keep things consistent. It's like when you weigh yourself like once a week, you got to use the same scale just to make sure you're getting an accurate.
Our weekly Den of Geek.
Yep. So he's not as happy with this episode as he was about last week's. But his reasoning is interesting to me because he brings in what's actually going on in the country right now in this
with the shooter stuff.
Review. Yeah. So he starts out, he says, it's difficult for me to review Waco this week. After 17 were killed in a mass shooting at high school in Parkland, Florida, watching a show centered on an invasion set about by the pursuit of illegal weapons feels like pure fantasy. First of all,
no,
just stop. That sentence there, he says the pursuit of illegal weapons.
Right.
Okay. So keep going. He says, though based on actual example of United States practicing a form of gun control, that fact feels so far removed from our current reality in this country, and it hung over my head the entire episode. My mind couldn't help but tragically wonder to frightened teens and high school staff members texting and calling loved ones, all that stuff, obviously. As I watched Steve sneak a call to his sister. He says, I'm sure some will use tonight's episode of Waco to back up their argument against gun control, see what happens when government gets involved with trying to take people's guns. Maybe they'll say, but after all, this is the most vocal anti-big government series in recent memory. They'll forget the fact that Branch Davidians were easily able to acquire assault rifles, and maybe they'd have had weapons in the compound in the first. Maybe if they'd never had weapons in the compound in the first place, if forced to pass a background check to buy a weapon of that power, instead of being able to pick it up at a local gun show. Do you hear the contradiction? Do you hear a contradiction there?
Oh yeah.
The first sentence says, that they're in pursuit of illegal guns, and then in the next paragraph he says they were easily able to pick these up without passing a background check at a local gun show. which is contradicting the illegal guns that
Right.
that supposedly were or were not.
Not to
there.
mention that the main reason, I might be wrong on this, but the main reason was guns, but also maybe some child sex stuff, you know?
It's
about the
it's
children?
so there's just so much stuff here. We're not this isn't a discussion about gun control or any of that. The whole idea about illegal guns was a complete red herring. There was
Clearly.
never any illegal guns. The Branch Davidians were always in code with all their completely legal gun dealings, which many people in Texas did all the time. You had the local sheriff's department, which had been called many times by the various Branch Davidians, discussing, hey, is this specific add-on okay, or is this specific modification okay? They've invited sheriff and local townspeople to come over and go shooting. There was absolutely nothing being hidden, even as I think we mentioned when we did the original Waco episode, and maybe on episode 1 when we reviewed it. The Branch Davidians themselves, a year before this happened, when they were initially being quote-unquote investigated, invited them to come over and look, and they didn't want to do it. I do not buy this excuse that they were looking for illegal guns and that bullshit. Oh, and by the way, just to put it all on top, these alleged illegal guns, I believe that evidence went missing. So
The main reason I like
You
Den
know?
of Geek because it gets Justin so worked up.
the guns are hanging out with the door and all the other stuff. Oh, and then the slab with the explosion on it.
In the
They're all
camera
hanging out.
footage.
Yeah, and the camera footage. Yeah, they're all hanging out, and I don't know,
So-
wherever the Ark of the Covenant is.
He says a bunch of other stuff.
Indiana
The
Jones
Holy
and
Grail.
the Temple of the Door of Waco.
And Mount Carmel.
Later on in the review, he says a lot more stuff that I really don't care about. Later on in the review, though, he's talking about David Thibodeau and Michelle, his wife, and their relationship on this. And at the end, he says, however, the series really drops the ball in a key, delicate scene when Thibodeau asks Michelle what it's like to be David's wife. Though there's a moment of hesitation, her answer completely sidesteps the elephant in the room and does disservice to highlighting David's most
She
disturbing
thinks
crime.
he's the Messiah. She
No,
thinks he is God.
Even if not, that silence there, I thought said a hell of
yeah.
a lot. Her hesitation there said a ton. It was so much better played than having her go, listen, this is what David does.
Right.
Like making it completely.
Yeah, the silence,
completely-
the same. I mean, the way this show is working, it gives all the sides, and she hesitates, which speaks volumes. And then she says, it's amazing. It's amazing to be the wife of the Messiah, which is crazy. If you honestly believe that, of course, that would be your response. You'd be like, I think a little bit, in the here and now, and I'm not thrilled about where I am in life because we're probably going to die. However, if this is Jesus or something equivalent to Jesus, then holy crap, I am Mary.
Basically, I got to get over myself is kind of the personality she's taken, the attitude she's taken. But he thinks the silence wasn't enough and they should have went more into that. I thought it was more of like something, realistic interaction between the two there. That's probably literally would have happened in a conversation such as that. It wouldn't have been like the CSI dramatization where it's like, you know what's going on here? Let me tell you what's actually going on, and going into this really dumb, unrealistic dialogue between the two where nobody talks over each other.
Yeah, no. That just speaks to the fact that this is an amazing show with great actors and everything. Like, they are fleshing it out superhumanly.
And I know we've said this multiple times, Dan, but I feel like you just have to say it again. If only this was just fake and made up and I could enjoy having more episodes, you know? Like,
So then there's more reviews. Are we done with Den of Geek?
we're done with those guys.
Sure.
We are. Well, we're done until next week, obviously.
Yeah,
We're
until
gonna
next
get-
week.
Well, I doubt that the other reviews are going to be any better, so
So
go ahead.
Here's a review. This is on Metacritic.com. It takes several big publications reviews, like magazines and newspapers. This is from the LA Times. It says, Waco isn't skillful enough to weave all the opposing perspectives here into a three-dimensional story, where the ultimate victims are the innocent folk betrayed. The innocent folk.
Kidding me?
The innocent folk betrayed by their leader and government is so busy delivering spam-sized chunks of ham-fisted dialogue defending misunderstood Koresh, it loses all the other critical threads that make Waco a cautionary tale for all sides. I thought it does great of making it a cautionary side for both sides, or tale for both sides.
What would have been better?
Does this review go into any details about what they're talking about?
Yeah, they're just short little one-paragraph reviews. He just says they're spending all their time defending Koresh, which I don't think they're doing anymore. At the beginning, we said they kind of seem to be, but since like episode 3, they seem to be kind of pulling away from the side of David and taking more of the side of the people, the real people.
Yeah, what are these cautionary tales that they want? Do they want them? I mean, are the cautionary tales like? Are they don't trust a cult leader, or are they don't trust any government at all? Like, if it's too cautionary, or if it's not, I don't know. If they want a cautionary tale, my take on that would be don't trust your government at all, because they might just, shove it up your ass and, come at you from all angles that they possibly can and, try and shut you down. That's the only cautionary tale I have from this.
Yeah, it's
Here's this one says, well, this one's just from a person, like a user review. It's not from an actual critic. It says, while sequence of events are paced adequately in this miniseries to keep audience engaged, storyline is seemed to be biased, and Taylor Kitsch's performance as a cult leader requires more work.
Really?
I think the guy playing David Koresh is doing fantastic.
And not even, because again, he's not a cult leader. He's a,
religious leader. Yeah, but still the fact that they're basically saying his part is really shallow, it sounds like. And every other review I've read, even the ones against the show, they're saying Taylor Kitsch is doing a fantastic job playing the charismatic leader of David Koresh. This is the first person that says, he could have been better.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think all the actors have been just phenomenal in this show.
Yeah, and they're saying that he tailors to, what was the line again?
Taylor Kitsch, that's his name. He doesn't tailor. It just says Taylor Kitsch's performance as a cult leader requires more work, is all it says. Just saying he's not doing it.
How?
I don't know. That's what I was trying to say.
He's clearly exemplified as a crazy guy who knows what he believes, which is what we all, at least 3 of us, all agree on. He believes what he believes. We all think he's a little bit crazy, and it shows him as kind of crazy, and it shows him as a guy who had underage wives that he had to kind of cover up, and it shows him as a guy who says that God is not speaking to me anymore, and I don't really know what's happening, but you can't leave. Like, it shows him in a very negative, like, neutral light, in my opinion.
The New York Times says, Waco is a workmanlike summary of events that paints a largely, some would say, excessively sympathetic portrait of Koresh and his followers. This is likely because of demands of dramatic compression rather than any propagandizing on the part of the show's makers. So they're being too sympathetic of the followers.
Justin, final thoughts?
We're just gonna leave that there.
Yeah, I'm done with those reviews.
I think we said enough about that.
So at this point, I would say a couple episodes in, I wasn't sure they were going to take it because it seemed like it was too good to be true. Then they showed who shot first. They continued going. They showed the attempts of the insider, Mario Luigi, whatever, that he tried to stop them. They showed the FBI's desire to not end it peacefully. So I think they're going to show that Delta Force was there, and I think they're going to show that the fire was started by the incendiary rounds shot up by the FBI. And that's where I stand. I think that's what's going to happen on Wednesday. And just for the record, Wednesday is February 28th, and that's the day this all started.
Wow.
That's
I think you pointed that out last week, and I can't believe none of us noticed that before. That's how this timeline worked.
Randomly, we recorded the main episode of Waco, the episode that aired publicly on the night that the Waco miniseries was releasing, and then we are going to have the wrap up of the miniseries on the night that Waco was wrapped up. So
we should attempt. I don't know if time will work out. We should attempt to watch it that night and like late night record that night on February 28th.
If we could figure it out, I would be down for doing that.
If we could figure it out, which is very unlikely, I'd be down to watch it live and live stream our reactions to it for the Downers Club. Even though nobody in the Downers Club is probably watching this as it comes out, including us, so no judgment.
Hey, I watched. I listened to it the day it came out to hear myself.
One thing I do want to point out is within 5-6 episodes we've recorded with Justin, we've completely indoctrinated him into the madness known as conversation between us. Because he's completely flipped on the phrases and terms that he uses for.
Well, how do you say what it is other than a bunker? Maybe a community? That doesn't really explain what.
Well, I'm even talking. He's even saying Mario Luigi now, which was my goal.
John Luigi Mario.
Which was my goal in this whole thing, was to get Justin to call him John Luigi Mario.
So what you're saying basically is after Wednesday, we're going to be doing a Rotten Potatoes review of the Super Mario Brothers show, right? Or movie, right?
Oh, we got to do that.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
In honor of John Luigi Mario. I
just recorded a Rotten Potatoes interview or Rotten Potatoes review for Black Panther, and Mark Clare was on, and he was like, hey, you need to do like old movies. So that just confirms it. We need to do a John Luigi Mario's first breakthrough movie and review the Mario Brothers.
How are we calling that a breakthrough?
I better be here for this. I better be here for this, Dan.
I'm down. I loved that movie as a kid. I know it's terrible, but it's also great.
My favorite was the harmonica playing Goomba. He's my favorite in the whole movie.
All right.
Back to Waco.
Any final thoughts on Waco? Episode second to last?
5.
The penultimate episode, if you will.
Wow, that's a big word.
Yeah, I read a book or two in my day.
Why do we have this guy? He's too smart for us.
If only he read the Bible.
I know.
That's our ultimate goal, is to convert Justin. Oh, he has a Bible.
Of course I have a Bible.
I know, we've talked about it on church.
What desk leg are you holding up with that, or coffee table leg?
It's right next. It's in my library, my friend. Right next to all the other great books I have.
That says a lot about you, Justin. It really does.
That I have a copy of the Bible?
That you at least are willing to have a copy of the Bible, regardless of your stance on it.
One of the most important books in Western civilization.
Anyway, Waco.
Anyway, a tragedy.
Guys, thanks for coming on. If you don't have any final thoughts, thanks for being here, and I'll talk to you guys next week for the finale of Rotten Potatoes Waco miniseries review.
Thanks, guys.
Cool. Thanks.
Tanks, helicopters, and troops. For what?
Nothing scares the powers that be more than the people that don't need them. This is our time to prove through suffering that we are worthy of the miracle that's to come. Big brother wants to come in here and fight. We will fight back. Know it or not, you came here to be tested. And this is a test.
This has been a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.